All right. So I keep getting a lot of questions about what's wrong with the car and things like that. So the biggest issue with the car is that fifth gear is locked out. Does not work. You can hit the gate, you let the clutch out, you got nothing. It just has nothing. If you try to push it up while it's in that gate without clutching it, it just wants to grind. Um, Kind of a backstory about what was going on with this car. So just like everybody else, I originally swapped this with a T56 out of a Camaro, Trans Am, whatever. I bought it locally. It was a T56 with Magnum internals, so the bigger 32 spline output shaft, beefy synchros, steel, blah 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 blah. You know, all the stuff that anybody would ever want. Paid $2,000 for that transmission. Didn't come with anything, just the core. So I had to buy a bell housing, had to buy a clutch, had to buy a shifter, had to buy a drive shaft, had to buy sensors, had to buy everything to get that transmission to where it needed to be. And I put the car together, put the swap in it, and called up my tuner, Ryan Mitchell. I think I mentioned that in the other video. He and I go out on the highway. We're cruising along, doing 70 miles an hour, just doing some drivability tunes, trying to get the air fuel good. And the transmission makes a really loud whine. About 2 seconds later, just locks up the rear tires. So I clutched it, coasted off the highway, and I ended up being able to get it in forward gears again. And we ended up driving the car home at like 30 miles an hour in third gear or something like that because we didn't know what the heck happened. So dropped the transmission, pulled the tail shaft or the tail housing off of it, and saw that one of the bearings for the output shaft had just basically disintegrated. It had like a little plastic race that kept the bearings together, and it just disintegrated. Sent those roller bearings, to the transmission, locked it up. So took that transmission to Accurate Performance over in Fairfax, Kansas. It's just on the other side of state line. I'm in Kansas City, Missouri. That's basically KCK. Paid them $1,000 to rebuild this. So, put a bunch of new parts into it, new output shaft, and put the car or the transmission back in the car. So now I'm into this transmission, over $4,000, and I call up Ryan Mitchell again to finish the tune, come out and do the power tunes. Had to pay him again to come out and finish all that stuff because it's his time. He was driving to me. He was in South KCK. I'm in North KCK or KC Mo. So giant pain in the butt for him. We do all our power pulls, get all that stuff cleaned up, and then except for it was doing like a hang idle where you would be rolling to a stop sign and the idle would be up at like 2,000 RPM. So he made a quick change to the tune, reflashed that, started up, went to go take it around the block, back it out of the driveway, and there was no reverse. It wouldn't go into reverse. And no matter what we did, tried bleeding the clutch, tried a bunch of different stuff, no reverse. So I ended up pulling the tail housing back off the car, and that same bearing failed. And I'm talking, this is within like 5 or 6 miles. So at that point, I just said, fuck it. And I pulled that transmission out, sold it on Craigslist for $800 for parts. Guy bought it, thought, it's going to be an easy fix. I do this kind of stuff all the time. I told him, good luck. I paid professionals a lot of money to try to fix this thing. At that point, I took that money and I went out and bought this CD009. So I bought that, made a shifter for it, bought the Collins adapter with their clutch kit or their clutch disc, which uses the T56 or Camaro Corvette. This happens to be a Corvette pressure plate from Exetti, but it works with all that stuff. Put that in the car, had a drive shaft made, and there was no fifth gear. So I was like, well, damn, I got it from, carpart.com, a local, from one of the local wrecking yards, paid, whatever, like $600 for that transmission. Thought, well, maybe it was just a bad luck. It was a bum transmission. So then I just looked around and I found the transmission's in the car right now. I found this up in Omaha. So drove 3 hours up there to go pick up this transmission. You cut the bell housing off because you use the factory T56 bell housing with the Collins adapter and whatnot. And I went ahead and said, well, screw it, just in case it was something weird with what was going on with the clutch disc or with the shifter. I bought the Serial 9 shifter. That was $500 and some change. Bought a new clutch disc from Casper Clutch. So like I said, it's a 6-puck unsprung that adapts to the 11-inch. So 11 inches is, I think, 11 or 11 and a half inches is what the T56 stock clutch disc is, versus the Collins ones, which just used a Nissan 350Z disc, which was undersized compared to the pressure plate. So I wanted to make sure I took full advantage of all the friction area on the pressure plate and the flywheel. New clutch disc from Casper. Threw all this back in the car, and fifth gear still isn't there. So that's really the biggest issue, and that's probably one of the reasons I've lost the motivation for the car. Each time I had one of those issues, it's a huge hit to your motivation. It's a huge hit to your pocketbook, trying to invest all this stuff. Every time I had an issue, like, when I broke the first transmission, I was still gung-ho. I was like, screw it, I want to get this thing fixed. I ripped the transmission out, went and dropped $1,000, got it fixed, threw it back in the car. Everything was back up and running within like a month or month and a half, something like that. Well, running. Then I had an issue. So I pulled it out and I was like, what am I going to do? And then the car sat for like 8 months. So then I decided, did a bunch of research, found out about the Collins stuff, the CD009, bought a transmission, slowly pieced together, bought all the other parts I needed, put that in the car. We're talking, another 8 months on top of that. So maybe sat for a year and a half with no transmission in it. Then I have the problem. Now my motivation is in the dumps. Don't know what I want to do with it. Just said, screw it, it's just going to sit. It's not costing any money to have it sit in the garage. Finally got that motivation back, bought the other transmission, threw it in there, and that's kind of just where we're at now with the transmission. Like I mentioned in the other video, it could be a sensor. I did pull the reverse lockouts out because surprisingly enough, the CD009, this is a fat-ass transmission. I had to pull some stuff out of there to make sure that it cleared the tunnel over on the other side, pulling out sensors and whatnot to make it so that way we weren't clipping the tunnel and it would actually fit. So anyway, could be something stupid that I did. Who knows? Maybe somebody who knows a lot more about these things than what I do might take that and throw a reverse lockout sensor in there or some shit, and the car is going to be tip-top, running great. I don't know. But as of right now, I bought that turd over there that I really want to do some work to. And since I've got motivation to work on that, no motivation to work on this, I just have decided that it's time to sell this. So anyways, hopefully that clears up some of the questions that people have. I know I discussed the axle thing in another video. But again, if you have any more questions and I continue to get a bunch of stuff, I'll make another video and post that up for everybody to kind of see and talk about. Thanks.